Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, but zero debate. I mean, really, you can't find any physicist willing to actually debate all of these foundational subjects, to compile some, good index of evidence and why they believe and why they're convinced and why they think everybody else has to believe and why it's beyond some kind of reasonable doubt, when all the crap they talk about is clearly easily doubted because the evidence is really, really thin. Some of it's strained, literally strained and distorted and perverted and essentially lied about. Okay, like again, the Eddington experiment. Piece of garbage as an experiment. The guy admitted it in his own journal. 10% of the data quality. I wouldn't stake my life on these results. You don't give that experiment a New York Times headline saying Einstein proven right, especially when you can't reproduce the results from Earth. And on top of that, you don't bother doing the experiment from space where there's 400 times better resolution. I shouldn't have to say that to physicists, right? I shouldn't have to explain to physicists, because I didn't know it until Professor Lewin said it. Somebody said it, and I said, wow, it's 400 times better? Wow, I knew it was better, but 400 times better, that's huge. Anyway, all right, back to the regular screen. All right, so I do have a history with Sabine in the sense that I have tried to contact her, I think, 3 times. The first was when she did run some racket, frankly. So it really wasn't her. It was some other physicist that you would talk to on the phone. So you pay $50 and you get a half hour, something like that. And really they were just doing, homework equations or some kind of bullshit. I don't know what the purpose was. But yeah, I thought I would go ahead. $50, good. I get to ask physicists questions like, why the hell are you Leibnizians? Why don't you call yourself Leibnizians? Why this? And why are you pretending that classical physics is Leibniz's physics, not Newton's physics? The whole thing is just such a pile of crap. The history of mv squared, particularly, just absolute garbage statements, no evidence, then junky experiments. I mean, obviously, really, a high school student could, if asked, what's the flaw in this experiment? They could figure out the flaw in the experiments. They're really bad. They're not logically constructed. That's it, I guess, as a statement. Anyway, so I did contact her in the sense that I did fill out the form. Here, I want to talk. And I did just make the honest statement, I'm going to record the conversation. And they wouldn't let me do that. So then I think I offered $150 if I could record it, and I got no reply back. So that was the first encounter. Then I think I did email her again, just saying, you can't call everybody a crank. I mean, some of us might actually have a good idea. Well, too bad, shut up, fuck you. No reply, I think. And then I did offer her, I don't know whether it was $2,000 or $3,000, but I offered her at least $2,000 to engage in some sort of video presentation on the subject of 1/2 mv squared. Dealing with the energy duality that physics is hiding from. No, she wouldn't do it. No reply anyway, right? So the same old garbage. And so, she has evolved, in terms of she started off, with a small channel just doing this physics thing, and then she became this, whatever this is, a performance artist in a completely different way. She used to do actually music videos that were kind of entertaining, if you go for that kind of thing. I certainly mentioned previously, years ago, how you have to give her some credit with this. She did a good job, and but you have to give a shit about that kind of crap, and just don't give a shit. Anyway, so she actually made one of those music videos, the last one that was on her regular channel, pooing on the idea of a unification theory, which just seems so irrational. From my perspective. I mean, it just seems to me that I've always understood the small universe is going to be a simpler universe. It's not going to have ESP particles. It's really not going to have battleships, and it's not going to have stuff that is complexly featured, because the world we exist in doesn't show any indication of any unreliability. I mean, everything seems to imply that every single proton is exactly like every other proton. You never find a hollow proton or a clunker proton. And the same with the electrons. They seem like, oh yeah, there's just a zillion of them, and they're all exactly the frickin' same, and they're all doing exactly the frickin' same thing. And now they have modified that since I was a kid. Now all of a sudden electrons have all kinds of nuance, and they have all spins and all kinds of other bullshit. They're even dipoles of some kind. They have dipole moments or some kind of nonsense. Anyway, there's just so many. You could just go through all the crap that has, been just crap invented. Okay, so the Bohr model of the atom, the whole solar system thing, they never argued about any of this. They never had a round table where they would discuss, well, is this the best way to diagram this? I mean, what about a magnetic model? I mean, the electrons and protons are basically acting just like magnetic poles. I mean, it's the same idea of the repulsion and the attraction. So the mechanism is exactly the same. So couldn't you just obviously understand that they're trapped in, configurations that are magnetically neutral in terms of a balance of repulsion and attraction, and that works just fine, and nothing has to spin around at 470,000 meters per second or anything. So anyway, they invented this whole orbiting thing, and then they said the orbiting thing can't be an orbit, as we know an orbit, because every time the electron spins, it's going to be creating a magnetic field and doing all this other crap. Where they think that thing generated it, when it's not generating anything. Magnets don't generate a field. Magnets don't generate energy, okay? So why would you think an electron is generating electricity? Like somehow it has to have a generator, it has to have a motor, it has to pull it out of something. It doesn't. It's pulling it out of the environment. The environment's doing it. A magnet is just reflecting the energy that hits it, and sending a signal, okay, a pattern, all right, that's different than the pattern if it wasn't a magnet, and that's all that's really there. But anyway, I mean, all this can be explained. I guess what I really should do, just in case some Sabine, one of her people, one of her people might be watching this video, just in case one of her people is watching, I probably should just show the simulation real quick, just to up my credibility, a little bit. All right, there, should be there. So I've tried to enhance the look of it a little bit so you can see things a little better, but really it's very simple. Okay, there's just force and matter, okay, in what I would consider the elemental universe. And the force comes in two flavors, and the matter comes in two flavors, electrons, protons. So you can say the force bits come in two flavors, electron force and proton force. So that's it for the players, and then there's just three interactions. So a force bit can hit and reflect, a force bit can hit and stick, or a force bit can hit and change color. So that's it, and it perfectly duplicates charge. So right away you can see that the charges are behaving, okay, just like charges would, in the sense that the green things avoid the green things, and the red things avoid the red things, and the green things and the red things stick together. And clearly it's illustrating the strong force, because if you saw this red thing, okay, if the red thing was an electron and the green things were protons, you could see that, it's basically allowing two protons to get much closer to each other, because there's an electron between them. And so you don't need a strong force to push them together, a strong force that disappears, or a strong force that has no origin, or it has no character. And no, it's a simple mechanism. So there's really not a strong force. Technically it's an absence of force that allows the protons to get close together. And it works. Okay, it's still in development. It's not, haven't figured out I haven't gotten it exactly correct in terms of how fast something moves, how much energy each bit gives. All of the kind of details haven't been completely corrected, but it's close. Anyway, so this would be creating nucleuses. Obviously, this stuff would be starting to arrange into patterns, and if I change the amount of force, you can see some of that, where it'll create geometric shapes. Alright, so anyway, just pointing out that, regular physics has no idea how a charge works. Okay, they have no idea why electrons do what they do. They have no idea why protons do. They have no mechanism at all. Nothing. It's just some magical thing that they're capable of. And with this simple little rules, I can duplicate that without any magic. Okay, no ESP, none of that crap. All right, so enough of that. So we'll move back to a review of what physics is to these people. And frankly, they're all. I said it in the last video, and I guess I'll say it again. This is sort of like they're all a bunch of religious kooks arguing about the details of what color God's beard is. So I'm a Protestant, I'm a Catholic. Just absolute nonsense. Christians fighting with Christians, which is just hilarious. All this bullshit over the configuration of the God model. And what's missing is just some counter theory, like Darwin showing up with evolution, and giving people a rational option. You don't have to believe in these totem poles. You don't have to believe in the volcano god or the shark god or the Jehovah thingy, whatever the hell that is, the M that I am god, the one that where Noah lives 800 years and only has 9 kids, that god. Anyway, yeah, that's realistic, right? I mean, shit. The book starts with a story you just can't believe. You're just saying, what the fuck? Who are you kidding? 800 years. Anyway, so what do I want to say? Why would you make us get old anyway? Why bother with any of that stuff? It's like they don't start off with, well, here's a description of the afterlife. No, they don't give you any of that. And obviously the description's going to be, well, no, you're just going to be a potato farmer forever. Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that opportunity. I think I'll take a pass. Anyway, yeah, I have to pause. All right, there, it's back. All right, so so I'm done begging and pleading and all this crap. I'll just make these videos and point out how I can't buy myself, okay? Just give me the price. If you're a Sabine people, just tell me, what's the price tag? I mean, how much do I have to pay to be part of the conversation or part of this argument about how this person's saying something stupid? How do I get on that list? Even if you want to just make it a commercial thing, okay, where, I'm just buying time on your channel, whatever. She did that for Brian Keating, I remember, so I don't know what he had to pay, to put his commercial in the middle of her video. What the hell? There's always something getting in my way. I mean, it's not what I want. Where the hell is her channel? I had it here before. It's missing. Ah, there it is. Okay. All right. So maybe we'll just play a video. I mean, the subjects are all kind of, bleh, most of them. Okay. And it's all kind of this hypey stuff, where the headlines are more than the video is going to be. So it is clickbaity. It is the intelligence explosion near a reality check. I don't know who's even predicting an intelligence explosion. It's hilarious. I mean, obviously people's IQs are dropping precipitously. This could test Stephen Hawking's prediction. Bullshit again, whatever this even means. T is approximately, I don't know, or infinitely 1 divided by m. I mean, AI learned to lie deliberately, but it's kind of funny. I don't know. The whole AI thing, again, it's just kind of stupid. It's not doing real thinking, okay? It's just creating grammatically correct sentences. And reading Wikipedia pages. So you want to hear what, it's not common denominator, I guess you would argue, but extensively written. So whatever's extensively written is going to be the, approved statement. Okay, huge cosmological problem might have just disappeared. I doubt it was a problem that I even could, even after 1 billion years, I probably couldn't care about it. But anyway, climate change violates human rights, court finds. So that doesn't make much sense. I don't know what the fuck that could be. Space-based solar power is dead. Well, I mean, the idea of trying to shoot power through the atmosphere to the Earth does seem a bit unrealistic. Does seem like it could go terribly wrong. Let's see. Universe was once divided into cells. New study says. I don't. The universe was divided into cells. Who could care? New test for quantum gravity. So there's no test for quantum gravity because there's no such thing as quantum gravity. So that doesn't go anywhere, I'm sure. Time to get real about climate change. So yeah, she has done a couple of videos on climate change that aren't bad in the sense of just going through some of, it's a lot of statistics, a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of factors, but I'd still argue that what you don't hear from them is some kind of simple explanation, which is, it seems kind of obvious what has taken place. Okay, over the last 300 million years, or even 500 million, a bunch of material that was growing, that is, it received solar energy, got buried without completely decomposing. So it didn't release its carbon back to the atmosphere. And basically it got sunk, the carbon, okay? And through that process, and it's an insane amount of this stuff that didn't fully decompose, didn't get back into the carbon cycle, okay? Got pulled out of the carbon cycle. And over the same period of time, the Earth went from being, whatever it was, the average temperature, 60 degrees or 70 or something, and it lost 10 degrees Celsius or something like that. A significant amount of temperature loss over the entire surface of the Earth. So obviously, you would be able to kind of argue that, the big difference is that you took all that carbon out of the cycle, and then we showed up, and, in 100 years, we burned maybe 30% of the oil. I don't know what the number would be. A huge percentage of stuff that took millions of years. I mean, hundreds of millions of years of storage, and we released it in like 3 days, So a huge boost in the carbon, and even though the carbon's not much of a greenhouse gas, it's enough of one to create this warmer air that holds more moisture, and then the water ends up, the humidity ends up being a real greenhouse gas, and that's the real problem. So it just seems kind of obvious that that's what's taken place, is we released a bunch of stuff that actually had cooled the Earth. And now the Earth is going to be hot again. But anyway, I don't want to argue that subject, but I just mean I wish physicists would talk in those kind of, I think it's a simpler diagram of why it's obvious it's human related. There's this huge difference in the two planets. The one 150 years ago had a whole bunch more oil in it than the one now. And that's a huge difference, and it's kind of an obvious, it's black, gold, it's kind of obvious. All right, well, anyway, I want to get into that. So artificial life, she's talking about AI getting conscious. These people don't even know what the word conscious means, I don't think. I mean, to be conscious, it has to feel. You're not going to be able to give your AI a feeling. Feeling is a biological function, first off. I mean, and how would you even trying to simulate it would get you into all kinds of trouble. I mean, how could you even try to start to simulate it? I mean, how do you create enough awareness? I mean, enough complexity where you can actually fool a brain into thinking, okay, that its thoughts are painful or uncomfortable, that there's a something to make uncomfortable in the first place. You're not going to do that with a frickin' it's a calculator, okay? AI isn't anywhere close to being a human correlate. It's not even close. All right. So anyway, a bunch of whatever. So this is all the science that people want to talk about that just doesn't mean anything. The real problem with warp drives. Well, the real problem is there's no such thing, and the very idea of pushing matter. Okay, when the force you have to push it with, right? The only force available to push matter with is the forces we know of, and they're all going the speed of light. So how can you push something faster than the speed of light with stuff that's only going the speed of light? I mean, do I have to say duh? I mean, fuck, why is this a subject? Why does somebody think this is a possibility? The forces can't go faster than the speed of light. Why the fuck would anything else be able to? And yes, they have their entanglement catch, but the whole entanglement thing, like I can explain, is the whole wave-particle duality is easily explained because none of these people ever did these experiments. So that's the real point here. So Sabine made a video saying why I don't trust scientists, and of course it was mush. She didn't really get into the subject that you really can't trust physicists, okay? They're the real guilty ones. I mean, the other scientists are pretty fucking good at their jobs and staying grounded to Earth. It's the physicists who are all, they can make up this crap. There's no such thing as a theoretical biologist, okay? Why would you need a theoretical biologist, right? I mean, come on. So the other sciences aren't blighted by this. Let's just make crap up, okay? And then we'll fake some experiments to make it look like it's real. We'll take a 5-year-long picture of a black hole. It's not a picture, but yeah, we'll call it a picture anyway. So anyway, she has ragged on some of this crap. Like she did do a little rag on fusion and a little rag on the gravitational wave interferometer thing, but now I think she's become one of them. I think that's her new study field is, gravitational waves being part of some sort of capacity to detect what happened 50 billion years ago or something. She thinks that's going to happen. Anyway, so I will play a little bit of that. Okay, but yeah, you can't trust any of these scientists because they haven't done anything. I mean, all of these experiments that haven't been done. So they never did a tug of war between a 5-mass object going 10 miles an hour and a 10-mass object going 5 miles an hour just to demonstrate how kinetic energy is real. So they haven't even dropped 1 pound 4 feet and 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet and prove that kinetic energy is real. No, they haven't done any of these experiments. And a classic one is the double slit experiment. It's just, I guess maybe I'll draw this just because, we'll throw a little bit of this in there and science in here. I mean, it's so obvious once you make this claim, okay, about the existence. Let's see, is this slide? Yeah, that'll slide behind. I'll put that behind, and then I can just pull it out. That'll be easier. All right. This. So you have this experiment, you make this pattern, and the whole idea is you're arguing that it's being made. First, they don't explain the double maxima in the center, and then they don't explain that the pattern starts and stops, and they don't do any of that. So I don't want to go through the trouble of making a double slit pattern. Well, maybe I can do it. It's not that much trouble. All right, so you have 5 in the center. That means that each node is going to be 3, and they're going this way. All right, so anyway, you have this pattern, right? And it goes in both directions, and it fades. So the first problem you have is you're doing this diagram that this is some sort of This has something to do with waves, right, going through slits. So first off, they cheat the math by not using this distance and this distance in the math. They're using the surface distance. So they'll tell you what the small bars with the widest distance, and they'll tell you what the big pattern with the smallest distance. That's the math that they use if you want to do one of those two things. And that's the big dodge, is that the whole thing is happening on the surfaces. And as I point out, you can put a needle in and get the same pattern. So it's not about photons going through an opening. It's about photons going next to a surface. And the surface is where that's your point source. That's where you draw your vectors from. You draw your vectors from the point sources, which are the surfaces. I mean, that's also obvious too. But anyway, the real obvious thing is you're saying, okay, if it's waves, then waves are supposed to be, the difference between the pattern here and the pattern here would be the same. It's the same intensity. The wave doesn't lose energy going the same distance. So we should get photons across this whole thing. Why is the pattern fading? So every pattern you see, it'll get lighter and lighter, lighter, fade right out. So the first question they should be asking is, why the hell is it doing that? It shouldn't be doing that. And when you think one of the first experiments you do is put a piece of photographic paper here and put a piece of photographic paper here and see if any photons hit over here and hit over here. Wouldn't that be a logical experiment to do if you really cared about this as a physical phenomenon and you were really curious about what's happening? So they lost all curiosity. Just like with the Bohr model, they stopped thinking about possible models. They all jumped on a bandwagon and said, that's true, that's enough, let's keep going. And let's move on to the next thing. And that's all it is. But they never tested any of this crap. And it's just that. It's crap because they never tested any of it. They never really poked at the experiment to see what they could produce out of it. They just do the standard college, experiment in a box, and they put the box on the thing and they shoot the monkey down and they do the same shitty experiments for 50 years. I mean, that was a big surprise to me when I started watching some physics videos from the 1950s, and I found they're almost reading exactly the same script that was in the video from the 1950s. It's almost the exact same script. This is about, propaganda. It's not about inquiry and proving with like something called evidence. Wrong mouse. It's all a little technically challenging sometimes. Well, I'm just getting, unfortunately, old. But anyway, so none of this stuff I'm just saying that entanglement's all based on the two slit being some mysterious wooey experiment that you can't figure out. And all of it is based on the fact that they never really poked at any of this stuff. And all the experiments now are all way too abstract to even go near. If mv squared is wrong, which I know it is, there's no truth value. There's no such thing as a squared velocity anyway. It doesn't make any rational sense to have a cube of velocity. You can't square a velocity. It's clearly just a vector, and that's all it'll ever be. With a magnitude. So what, the whole thing is kind of nonsense, but it breaks everything. Okay, I mean, they measured the weight of an electron using mv squared. They linear accelerators calculated the energy of the electrons with mv squared. I mean, it's all over the place, and it's ruined everything. It's tainted it. And so all of these experiments they do are all, in my opinion, suspect for that fact alone. As soon as you put an mv squared somewhere in the formula you're using to figure out what your experiment is doing, you're probably screwing it up. Because the truth is, as the ballistic pendulum shows, the bullet doesn't have any more energy than the recoiling gun. It just delivers it quicker. And that's it. It doesn't have any more energy. 2,000 joules go into the ballistic pendulum, 1.8 come out. Come on. Why isn't something that obvious? I mean, why can't I say, isn't that obviously saying something about the credibility of this idea that there's all this magical energy in the universe? the very fact that gravity moves at the same speed as light, and light moves the same speed as magnetism, and magnetism moves the same, doesn't that seem to indicate that maybe it shouldn't be called the speed of light, it should be called the speed of force, and that gravity should be included? That obviously whatever gravity is, it's being caused by something very similar to a photon. That should be a possible reasonable deduction, but not for these people, because that's not consistent with the wooey God they want to create, this woo-averse that lies underneath. Again, she is opposed to unification theories for some reason. Why? Because they're going to be simple and they're not going to have any of this abstract nonsense in them. All right, anyway. So she makes this video saying don't trust scientists, and so we'll play some of this. But she's not really saying it. She's just saying some scientists. So some people have agenda. That's the first thing. And then secondly, they're just doing their job. So the military paid them to do something, they're going to do it. If it's the only way they can get tenure, then they're going to do it. They're going to talk some kind of shit, and they're going to believe shit, and they're going to try to find shit. And yeah, some of that's probably true, but I think it would also be true that some of them would out the system and say, gee, I really hate being a hypocrite. A duplicitous, defrauding the government kind of hypocrite, in the sense that I'm doing research that I know won't work. Well, she doesn't say that in this video, so she doesn't go that far, but she said things like that in the past. So she just uses all this little, whatever, these little jump cutty image thingies, Homer Simpson, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So the only thing that's worth anything is this little bit at the end, where she does some cheap description of what science should be. It's just, it's just so much crap.
Yes, in their arguments, they're afraid of being called alarmists, and they're afraid of giving anyone reason to dismiss their conclusion. And
yes, they're afraid is a funny idea, that a scientist should be afraid. Frankly, then get a different job if you're afraid. Get a real job and do science on the side or something if you really care about science. But yeah, some of this stuff you really have to be careful, and that's just being on the internet or being public. So anything you say will be recorded, and then they'll throw it back at you 15 years later, and then you'll have to explain the context of what you were saying and why in context it doesn't sound like what I said, and blah, 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 blah. So they'll just make you out to be something, and it's all very sloppy. But that's just a fact of life on Earth. So yes, if you're just going to do your job and collect your income, then just do that, and then you don't say anything about what you're doing. Just do your job.
And that creates incentives to make the situation look less scary and to underestimate uncertainties.
Not if it's their job. I'm just saying. So if a guy does the research independently, it's his own research, why the hell should he be afraid to say what it looks like to him? So I think that's a bogus argument. If he's working for some company, well, yeah, then he's got to worry.
Basically, it's right that you shouldn't trust climate scientists, but the conclusion from that isn't what climate change deniers want it to be.
Yeah, she's saying you can't trust them because they're underestimating, because they're afraid. So this is just one example where, and just imagine in physics where there was ever an underestimation, an under amount of woo or gobbledygook. They never under gobbledygook or under woo. So she's sort of famous for bringing up this physics without the gobbledygook. I don't see that anywhere on the channel anymore. But whatever, because she's full of gobbledygook. She believes all this crap. Look, Einstein shows up. He comes up with some vacuous statement about how, well, gravity's being caused by some bent spacey thing. Okay, that isn't even described. It's a space-time thing, whatever that is. And somehow it gives things momentum, which doesn't make any frickin' sense, but fine, because it takes it away when they try to leave, so at least it's conservative in the sense that it's magical energy in and magical energy you lose going out. But it's still crap, okay? It's not an explanation of gravity, it's nothing. I could call the sun light, the photons coming off the sun, a benchiadesic. Why would I though? Because I know it's photons. I don't have to call it a but it's doing exactly the same thing in reverse. Okay, it's spewing energy exactly in the inverse way that gravity works. So if I could just invert the sun and it sucked photons, it would be doing exactly the same thing gravity's doing. So I mean, this is just, so it's a non-explanation. It's non-physical. Why did they think this was a great explanation? And the only reason why, again, and then if you take Einstein's field equations, they're preposterously difficult to calculate. And all he really has to do is come up with some way to make gravity jerky, okay, so he can make Mercury orbit funny. And that's it. So it's enough jerk to screw up Mercury's orbit, but not enough jerk to screw up Venus's orbit. So that's all he has to do. And that's all I'd say the field equations are doing. But I could do the same thing by just saying, look, if I just process the sun, the center of the sun, a little bit. So if the sun is wobbling a little tiny bit, if the sun started off as a dipole spinning, all right, it would end up with a little bit of wobble, a precession in it. And that can explain Mercury. So, that's the thing they probably should, they probably could do is, get one of these probes close enough to the sun to actually measure the gravitational influence of the sun. But how do you measure it? That's the tricky part, to detect an oscillation in it. That's the hard part, because you need something stationary to compare it to. And it's pretty hard to put something stationary in space. But anyway, continuing.
It's not that climate change is a hoax. It's that it's almost certainly worse than the impression they raise.
So she is a bit of an alarmist in the sense of saying it's worse than we think it is, but I don't see anything really. I mean, obviously the pattern seems obvious, right? I mean, it's the warmest year in history every year, so obviously there's a trend going in a negative. It seems an obvious trend. Can't deny the trend.
So whom can you trust? Trust no one. What you can trust for the most part is data, maths, and logic.
Okay, so data, maths, and logic. So why would I trust data? Okay, first I don't get to see any of it. So it doesn't mean I don't get the data from the Hubble telescope or from the whatever the new one, the Webb thingy. I don't get the data from LIGO. I don't get the data from the Hadron Collider. I don't get any of this. And so where is the data? Okay, where's the data regarding, even the Eddington experiment? Oh, that's right. It's all missing. It's gone. It's all lost somewhere. And it was lost a few years after the experiment was done, which was kind of funny. And then maths. What does maths have to do with any of this shit? Why would I trust a mathematical equation? So you say, they say MGH. You can obviously, what are you talking about, MGH? Okay, we know it's 9.8 meters per 1 second. So every second it's 9.8 meters of extra velocity, and it's perfect. That's so damn proven. How could anybody not even understand it? So what are you talking about height for? It's about units of time, for fuck's sake. It's obviously MGT. So why would I trust your math? Why? Why would I be dumb enough to trust math equations where you do things like mv equals 1/2 mv squared, and then you derive a new equation with that insanely inaccurate starting point? Those two things don't equal each other. 1 second per 1 second in their brain equals seconds squared. Why did that pop open? I obviously clicked something. Whoops. Alright, so anyway, let's play along.
Based on the physical sciences, and I count climate science as physics, it's incredibly rare for data to be wrong or fraudulent, and for that to remain undiscovered.
Well, I would argue that's the biggest dodge ever, okay? Look at the data. Well, look what they say. Look at Al-Kahari. All these people talking about the double slit experiment. Where do they have any connection to the actual data? They don't show you the real pattern. They don't show you the real experiment. They don't show you how they did the experiment. They don't show the process. They'll say things like, hitting 2 electrons against a piece of nickel is the same as shooting electrons through two slits. What? So, oh yeah, so it's all kinds of fraud in the data, the way it's presented. They present the stupid wave image of the double slit experiment, right? Two waves, when their math is using the edge of the surface is where the wave center should be. They're not drawing the waves on the edge of the surface. They're not putting the waves where their math says they have to be. So you can't trust any of that crap.
It happens, but it's rare. It's likewise rare that maths or statistical analysis is just wrong and for that not to be criticized or corrected.
So again, you haven't corrected MV. Like I said, MV squared is the most unproven pile of horseshit ever invented by physics. Okay, I mean, it's just complete nonsense. Never demonstrated with any credible experiment in the history of science. There's no sign of any correction, not even close. There's one human being on Earth saying, fix it. One. Me. That's it. Why does this keep popping up? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And all the other equations, the work equation, force times time. All of them are wrong because it's all circular mathematics. It's all intended to draw a circle, to make one formula verify all the other formulas. It's all just junk.
Indeed, the problem with the foundations of physics is not that the data.
And then none of these formulas, I mean, a ton of them have these, this isn't really a substance, this W stuff, Well, just the whole idea that you would square a velocity when, there's squaring a meter makes sense. Cubing a meter makes sense. How can you square a velocity? How could that possibly be a rational thing to do?
All maths is wrong is that they have no data and the maths isn't about anything in particular. And finally, there's logic.
There you go. That's the big one. All right. And one of the logical things is I had some line I wanted to say, that, jumping the evidence is like jumping the shark. Okay, as soon as a physicist jumps the evidence, he's jumped the shark. And that's all physics has done. They have a little shred of evidence and then they just go for some big pile of bizarre crap. And it's just like Fonzie jumping the shark. You're just heading right for as soon as you start, saying I don't need to prove it, and that's what physics has basically done. There's no point now. Okay, the game's over, but you just go any bizarre, silly way. Why not make Fonzie into a magician, and then you can make him into make him a brain surgeon. Fonzie does brain surgery.
Logic is your friend. Trust arguments, not people.
There you go. That's a really good one, right? And so what are the arguments people make in defense of this mush? The arguments are silly. Why do we need dark matter? Well, because what we think is the way it works isn't working. And we need something to put the stuff that isn't working like under the rug.
This video doesn't have a sponsor because I was afraid it might upset some people.
Oh, yeah. So you could, look, let me sponsor it then. Fuck. All right, so I don't really understand that one. That is kind of bizarre, right? This isn't very... I mean, she barely even brushed the surface. She barely even said physics is... She didn't say anything like physics is all crap. She didn't come anywhere close to doing any of that crap. She talked about climate change and maybe... She didn't even bring up cold fusion, and all the bullshit stuff that's come out. It's not, it's all bullshit. She didn't bring up any of that crap. All the crap physics that has been spouted that her own videos are about, frankly. She has a bunch of videos pointing out, how, well, this is less than they're saying it is, So this is the one where she says theory of everything is useless. Oh, this is string theory. String theory isn't a theory of everything. I mean, that's just so much. What a pile of crap. Wiggly, worms. The universe is made out of worms. Yeah. Ones that like to go around in a circle and worms that like to just wiggle. Yeah. Oh, shit. Alright, anyway. So, probably enough of a video. I did take some notes, but I mean, what's the point? So, she does consider herself somebody who cares about elemental or fundamental physics, but I don't see any real evidence that she does, because she's just as wooey as the rest of them when it comes to talking about some kind of 15th dimensional bullshit. Well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't heard her say anything about a 15th dimension. But clearly all kinds of entanglement goop is probably fine with her. Alright, anyway, so enough of the video and such. So, till the next time, and so forth and whatnot. I mean, maybe I'll do, a couple more of these. I'm just, so there's probably no point, but I mean, for the historical record anyway, it'll be clear that I did all I could do to get these people to give a shit, okay, about being fair, alright, to even Newton. Be fair to physics before you turned it into mush. Because the old idea was better than the new ideas. Okay. I don't know how else to say that. They didn't jump the shark. That's it. They didn't jump the evidence. That's the truth of it. Except Leibniz, of course. He had no evidence. Again, he just preached mv squared. He didn't show mv squared. Anyway, till the next time, and such and so forth and whatnot. Yeah, that's enough. I mean, look, Sabine. Okay, don't pay any attention to me. Just do a video on the idea of denting clay. Okay, not penetrating all the way through, just denting it with round objects, and explain to me how it's a really good way, okay, to test something's energy. Or rolling something, like rolling something on a surface is in gravity, is a really good way to see how much energy it has. Okay. Why don't you explain the physics of those experiments? And then you can explain to me why a lever, a balance, says there's no such thing as kinetic energy. Because the balance says one mass going 4 velocity equals 4 mass going 1 velocity. It says Leibniz is wrong. And it said it back when Leibniz was alive, but Leibniz didn't like levers. So he didn't listen to them. Anyway, till the next time, I don't want to be a defender of any kind of archaic ideas. I'm just saying that clearly all the new physics is junk. It all is pointed in this direction where they just want it to be wooier and wooier, gookier and gookier. And there's just absolutely no interest by any physicist of doing anything solid, or you could draw a picture of it. If you can draw a picture of it, they're not interested.